Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who has helped me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Jo Whipp, who discusses with us her background of trauma and how she has overcome that. And largely her trauma was emotional, and I will acknowledge that sometimes emotional trauma can be longer lasting than the physical trauma because physical traumas heal where sometimes emotional traumas take much longer to heal. Jo walks us through some of the things that she has dealt with and is continuing to deal with, but finally is writing about some of this in an upcoming book. But Marty, what are some takeaways we can gain from Jo?
Jo mentioned sometimes with emotional trauma, there are words that are said to you or there are actions towards you. Having the courage to finally say, I'm not going to allow you to do this to me anymore. You're not going to talk to me this way. And once you have done that, the freedom you feel and how good you feel about yourself after you have put the boundaries up.
Sounds as if you may be talking from personal experience, Marty. But anyway, okay, we got to get away from that. But it's a great lesson to learn how to overcome some of the things. And when you're raised in a family culture where we just don't discuss these kinds of things, makes it even worse. Let's listen and learn together. Jo, it is great to have you with us. You have had a lot of life experiences, some of which I believe you will likely reflect on in a book you are about to write. We're interested in learning more about your life, and some parts of your life include boundaries. And Jo, I believe there's a lot of your life our listeners need to learn from you. We're very interested in learning more about whatever it is you'd like to discuss. Jo, great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Jo, can you start off with whatever of your past you want to just very briefly discuss for our listeners who may be listening to this podcast for the first time? It is not our purpose to dwell on the past, but to have our listeners identify with the past with just a brief overview. And then you, Jo, discuss how it is you have overcome any aspects of the past you would like to discuss.
Oh my goodness. Well, at my age, there's a lot of past.
All right.
There's a lot to talk about. You know, I think when we look back on our life, we tend to find that there's a theme that happens. It can be positive, it can be negative, but there's a theme. And I learned somewhere along the way that my trauma had really affected my ability to be my full self and to be all that I was meant to be. And I lived way too much in that pain and had to come through that to get to a point where I was living not in the past, which is toxic, but living instead in the present and having learned from that past.
How would you say you were able to overcome the past and build on that? I'm going to use that term. Did you have to make maybe even take a week, 2 week lifetime out to say, hey, I can no longer dwell in the past? Because it sounds as if not living your full potential then as maybe you are now, and you may even say you're still developing your full potential. But it sounds like you turned the corner, if I could use that term, Joe. Was that a can you point to a time in your life? Was it a date? Was it a series of over a long period of time where say, hey, I made the turn, so to speak?
I hope that everyone listening understands that life is a journey, and we have little segments of destinations where we reach a new spot in growth. And for me, that's very much what happened. I would grow in one area, and then more life would happen and I would grow again. As a young child, I was bullied at school and abused at home. And it wasn't the kind of abuse that was physical. So it was not something that back in the 60s and 70s that anybody was going to talk about. It was to be kept to yourself. I learned that I had to be strong on my own. And that was good, but it was also bad because we need other people and we need to be able to look to other people. So I really struggled, and I would have what I call Simons in my life, people who would come into my life and carry my cross with me and help me through difficult times. And going from trauma to trauma for many, many years. And I wasn't completely healed when I married, and that affected my marriage. It affected my children. The father of my children wasn't a healed person. It was a struggle. And it took me, gosh, I was in my 50s when I started really truly waking up to who are you? Who were you meant to be? And what can you do to become that person? So that's when I really pressed in to working on a total picture of who I am and who I could be.
Would it be fair to say you were raised in an environment, the family, the culture that, to a degree, it's just get over yourself and overcome whatever it is you're experiencing, whatever you've heard. Don't go around talking about it, just hold it within. Is that part of the environment you were raised with?
Oh, very much had to hold it within. Even after my first rape, I was told that it wasn't something that we were going to talk about.
Okay. And so you just mentioned a term that, okay,
I know.
someone physically abused you and just thought of you less than a person and so forth. And so we're not here to dwell on that past, Joe, but you, it seems, spent nearly 5 decades of your life to come out from under the basket, so to speak. I'm using my own terms, and I hope that doesn't unduly marginalize anything about your life. But did it take you 5 decades to start becoming the person we know God created you to be?
I think that there was a process within my married life and with my children and everything where I was doing a lot of growth there, but the environment wasn't conducive to the amount of growth I could have. And getting out of that was when I had an opportunity to really do some healing and a deeper healing. I had a lot of healing. I don't believe that I was dwelling on the past assaults, but my opinion of myself was affected deeper than I realized. And even though I felt healed and I felt like I had forgiven those people, I still was carrying something, and I had to get past that. And as I said earlier, it's a journey of little pieces. When you go on a road trip, you've got your map and you hit a spot, you hit a spot, you hit a spot. And each time I was growing, each time I grew further.
As I'm listening to you recount a part of your life, I want to ask you about boundaries. I'm going to believe there was a time earlier in your life you were just taught to kind of accept whatever the environment is, just live with it. But as you reflect on your life of the past, and now I'm referring now mainly to what you've learned from the past in the context of boundaries, would you tell a person who may be experiencing now what you did in your past, you should not accept whatever it is you're going through? You have to set a boundary and just say, I will not accept what you characterize me to be. And I'm trying to find the right words, Joe. I need your help to even phrase the question.
Well, it's funny. I remember at one point in my life saying that a boundary for me in my late teens and early 20 was that I would never be with anyone who hit me. Well, that's a bad boundary because it allowed me to stay in relationships that were emotionally and verbally abusive. What I had to learn was there's more to boundaries than just the physical, because I'd had the physical assaults. This was I will not allow any inappropriate touching, meaning hitting anything. So I had to learn that there's a deeper level of boundaries. It's where you know that you are being assaulted as a person in your emotions. Your emotions are being assaulted and your mental state is being assaulted. We throw the word narcissism around right now because people have discovered it. However, throwing it around is, gosh, dare I say it, a little detrimental because it's too important to just keep using it. It's like putting labels on children. Just, this person has ADHD, this person is autistic, this person is this or that. Labels are good in one way and very damaging in another. And when we label things like narcissism, we aren't touching the part that matters. And what really matters is how is the individual who is being treated poorly taking care of protecting themselves? What are they doing to protect themselves? If you are in a relationship, even a serious one, even if you're married, you should not stay in a position where you are being verbally and emotionally assaulted. Part of your boundaries needs to be, no, that is not okay. And you take actions to try to fix that. And that could be starting with counseling. I went into Celebrate Recovery. It was huge for me. Celebrate Recovery gave me a chance to find out. I remember the very first day I went going, I don't belong here. I don't do drugs. I'm not an alcoholic. I don't belong here. Well, within a couple of weeks, I was like, oh man, I belong here, because it was much more than that. And it got into some of those nasty details of being verbally and emotionally assaulted.
The emotional abuse, I'm going to believe you had to, and maybe you're still balancing, if I can use that term, acceptance that if you set a boundary too hard, you will not allow you to do that. Did you have to wonder if that person would accept you? I'm reading into what you're saying, maybe incorrectly, that you had to balance your life of acceptance because you needed acceptance and you didn't feel it in a positive way with some people. Am I interpreting you correctly?
Yes, when you decide that you are in a situation that isn't good, you are going to have to do the scary thing. I remarried, and the person I remarried, I remember very distinctly when I finally stood up for myself. I was in Celebrate Recovery. I had someone watching over me, my sponsor, and she said, okay, you go do it. I'm right here by the phone. It was a terrifying day for me. I was trembling, but I went in and said, you said this, you did this. I can't take this anymore. We're not doing this anymore. It is not acceptable. And I was terrified, but I did it. And then I got on the phone with her and she talked me through it. She talked me down from those shaky nerves in my body. And I realized that I had a huge triumph I had triumphed so big, and it was huge. And when that relationship ended, I went through stalking. I went through some pretty bad stuff in that way, and I was able to get away. I went up on a hill actually in the country, and it was this wonderful, beautiful healing space. Not everybody gets that luxury. That was a luxury to have that. And really, I have to say this, and that is, I could not have done anything that I could not have been through anything that I've been through without God helping me.
In that context, do you look back on your life and did you consider yourself a loner? And if maybe at least a part of that, how did you transition out of being a loner to where maybe you felt comfortable you needed one or two people in whom you can confide? Was that a part of your life transition?
You know, I had parts of my life where I was forced into being alone, but I have never been a person who I'm what they call an ambivert. I'm introverted and extroverted. So I have a space of me that needs that time to myself and a space of me that needs people. And when I have to pull it in, I do. Uh, COVID, for instance, I'm like, oh well, I just went to that person. Um, but I've always been able to have a few friends during the really rough times in my life, where I wasn't able to have the ability to talk to someone. Part of it was because the people, when we were really young, 14, my friend and I were both going through trauma at home and having experiences outside of the home that were bad. So it was a commiseration in some ways, but there was a part of it where we kept things to ourselves.
Am I understanding correctly? You have just very recently been accepted by a book company to write a book on perhaps a lot of what we're discussing right now?
I'm so excited about this book. Okay, so I've been in the fight in human trafficking for over a decade, and I felt like God told me to pull away, and it was really hard because it's my passion. But I did it, and I realized what I was going to do was write a book. The book is for peoples who are caregivers, respite workers, advocates, and volunteers, giving them a chance to excel and to really become effective in the work they do by taking care of themselves. We, as anyone who has anyone with special needs in their life, anyone who does volunteer work, advocates in the fight in human trafficking and homelessness, we tend to be real good givers and lovers, but we tend to not take care of ourselves as well as we should. And my thought is, if I can help them take care of themselves better, they'll be more effective and we'll have a greater impact in the work we do.
I want to advance what you just said and try to project yourself talking with a person who you are discerning. And I want to make certain our listeners know we're not labeling, stigmatizing, anything like that. But through discussing, you are discerning this person might be living a life I used to live. That is, they are not going to discuss anything in the past. Their family culture is just move on, but yet they feel the need to discuss, illuminate anything of that nature, but they need to develop your confidence and trust before they can discuss any of this. I'm giving you that background, Joe, to ask you to tell our listeners how might you approach that person, because I feel as if that might be a part of your background.
I love helping people. And one of the things that I have discovered is to really help someone, they have to be open enough to want to heal. And the other thing is you have to give them an opportunity to feel like you are a safe harbor. Uh, to do that takes love, and it takes a willingness to ask gentle questions and then accept the answers even when they're not pretty. And sometimes people aren't up to answering, and you have to accept that. And you just let them know that you're there, even if they're not up to it.
So, is there an aspect of your disposition that you're willing to wait but the overarching greater good is I want you to know I care. Is that largely what it is?
Oh, yes. I just love people. And I'm so grateful that we have an opportunity sometimes to really just touch someone's life. Sometimes it's as simple as smiling. I have seen people who looked so down, so broken, and I just smiled at them and I stayed with the smile long enough that I noticed them crack. And it feels amazing to see someone feel better because you took less than a minute just to love on them. And sometimes like I have a neighbor who went through a really horrible thing. And I just I didn't know what she was going through, but finally she ended up in my apartment talking with me and ended up that she got to a safer space. But during that period of time, it was very difficult for her, very painful. And just because I smiled, she literally told me, "You always have a smile on your face." And that had given her a feeling that she could come and talk to me.
I think one of the very important things about relationships of those who care, caregivers and the like, and I do speak on this in the context of leadership, is to create a psychologically safe space. You need to create an environment and a trust that no matter what you say, it will not be a matter of gossip. I won't be using it against you. That kind of a relationship is not going to occur in maybe one conversation, but I think probably statistically, it's going to take a lot of different conversations to develop that line of trust. Am I talking something that is operative in your life?
Oh, absolutely. I know that when I was really hurting, I was I was seeking what some people would call stranger therapy. I was so desperate to talk out the stuff that I was going through, and there was no one. It also, I say that because it also has to do with the other person being ready to hear you. So it goes both ways. There has to be a comfort where the person feels like you're safe, and it doesn't usually the majority of the time happen immediately. But there also has to be the person that you are talking to has to be the one who could help you, has to be a person who will be open and be able to hear you.
Something very important you're saying, and I want to ask you this in the context of trust, but not living in the past. Are you saying it is therapeutic to discuss, but not dwell on or live in the past? And I think in my question, I'm trying to ask you, what is the balance of feeling free to discuss the past without dwelling on the past?
I think my sister has one of the most beautiful ways of explaining it. She said, "You go down into the mine and you mine that which is there. The past, you mine what you need to mine out of that past. Then you come up out of that mine and you don't go back in it. You're done. You move on." I think that it is important for us to look at. In fact, Paul Martinelli from Empowered Living had a program where he taught us to draw a timeline from 1 to 100, put your age, and then by every 10 years, I end up having to do 5 years, you would write down things that were good experiences that showed a characteristic of you. And doing that was probably one of the most life-changing experiences for me because I found repeatedly compassion, leadership, and justice over and over in mine. And I would have never thought that of myself had I not gone through this. And where there were these dramatic holes in experiences that were like that was where the traumas were. And that also was enlightening to me, how those things can keep you back. But looking back gave me an opportunity to see a better version of myself than I had known, to greater knowledge of who I am inside of me, and then to be able to move beyond that even further than I had before.
That's great, Joe. I want to ask you, Ron touched on it a little bit. The person that says, "I don't have anybody." And if I go in and say to this person, "I'm done, the boundary, you're not going to treat me that way again." But going to somewhere like Celebrate Recovery, give them the assurance that these people will completely understand and hear them if they find a group like that or another group. So what would you say to that person that says, I don't have anybody, I'm too scared?
Well, first of all, it breaks my heart because it's a very painful place to be. I'm not going to color code it or sugarcoat it. I went through many years trying to find help and could not find it and stayed where I was because of it. Knowing what I know now, I would handle it different. But when it comes to finding help, Celebrate Recovery, it is full of people and people make mistakes and there's going to be better groups than others. But I can say that when you go into it with an open heart and mind to get help and you become determined that you will make a change in your life, there's a lot of practical things that you need to learn to do. I literally had bags packed for my children in case we had to leave immediately. There are things that have to be really practical. There are women's centers. There are places that you can go. You need to make it what you do. I even got myself a separate bank account. I got myself a post box. I started making the plan of exit. And these are things that you have to do to prepare yourself, depending on how lethal your situation is. And making sure that you keep your information very private as you can from this person.
In the context of boundaries, did you even have to separate yourself possibly from biological family members?
I do have biological family that I still keep away from. We like to believe that everything can get healed because we're getting healed, but the other person may not be healed. I believe forgiveness is for me. And so I've learned to forgive others. But when I reach out to those people, I find more toxic stuff happening. And so I just have stayed away.
Let me ask you about forgiveness. I am a believer, and Marty and I are faith-based. I'm a believer that you have 100% control over what you can forgive, but we have no control over whether the person accepts our forgiveness. Can you address that at all?
Oh, absolutely. What is it? The ability to forgive someone else is a gift that you give yourself. You absolutely cannot change that person. I believe strongly in praying for the people who have hurt us, and forgiving them is so powerful. I have to say, for me, the hardest part of forgiveness is when I'm in a situation where the person continues to hurt. So you're having to repeat the forgiveness over and over. And that is where I really struggled. I believe, as you do, forgiveness is very powerful. And that when we do it, we gain a strength, and not forgiveness hurts us. It's like decay in the body.
Were you, over a period of your life, able to gain friends that helped you develop the confidence and courage to be able to make some very difficult decisions? I just sense I'm reading that into your life, Joe.
I have had what I call Simons in my life. People who have come and they have been there for me. Little things like when I was 14 and I was in the hospital for a month, and the lady that they had in my room, older lady, her name was Hazel, and she still touches my heart every time I talk about her. But she was a friend to me, and she was good and kind, and she spoke to me how much she thought wonderful things of me during a time where I was neglected in some ways and where kids at school had done some really horrible things. It just really got me through a really hard time. And a true Simon never leaves your heart. And I've also had Simons where I had a woman that lived near us, and she was there during a really difficult time in my life. She took the kids and let me have time alone at home to literally just sob and just get through the pain I was going through. Beautiful people.
Will your book encapsulate some of what we're discussing right here and perhaps go into greater depth from which the reader benefits how to recover from the past?
Absolutely. One of the things that I really tried to strive in this book was for them to be able to find out where they're at, find out where they want to be. Because unless you know where you're at right now and you know where you want to go, you're kind of wandering around in the desert. When you get just a few things established, here's where I'm at. Good, bad, ugly, doesn't matter. This is where I'm at, but this is where I want to go. And it can be on the level of your goals and dreams, and it could be just on the personal growth level. It doesn't matter. I've tried to make the book a little bit coaching. I'm trained as a coach. And so in a way, it's a self-coaching book. Lots of thought, a lot of food for thought and things that they can journal on. And I do recommend that they journal when they read the book because it will help them through that process.
Couple of thoughts come to mind. Journaling. For those of us who are not real adept, it's not a daily habit. Journaling. Is it a matter of thinking ahead? Are you journaling? Are you just documenting some of the things you're currently thinking? Can you talk to the listener a little bit more about, and I have heard the term, Paul Martinelli has mentioned, authentic journaling.
I love authentic journaling. Okay, so what Paul teaches is where you pour yourself out on the page. He recommends at least 2 pages of just writing. And it can be, today was a really good day. Oh, that's right, I've got to buy pizza. You write whatever comes to your head. He says, as you do that repeatedly, you will then quit talking about pizza and you will get down to some nitty gritty and you will start to think out more. And if you go into it with a thought ahead of time, just like any other intention, if you go into it with intention, what is the intention? Is it to pour out my guts? Is it to figure out what I want in my life? Who do I want to be when I grow up? If you go into it, just ask that question, why am I doing this today? And then just go for it.
I think what I'm hearing you also say, we do necessarily need to define a life purpose. What am I about? When we are able to articulate a life purpose, that can help us define a very objective to which we, if we have that as a burning desire, that can help us overcome any of the past and maybe establish some of the boundaries that we have to have. Am I thinking in the right direction?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. I was almost murdered when I was 19. It was a bad experience. And I knew after that happened that God was going to redeem it. And I did not know what that meant. But 40 years later, almost to the day, I was standing in front of an amazing statue. It's a monument called Champions of Humanity. And I was interviewing somebody there. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. I'm doing exactly what I need to be doing. And it didn't escape me that it was 40 years. That's a real God number. But I just, I knew. I knew that I knew that I knew that I was called to be in the fight in human trafficking, whatever that was going to look like. I didn't know exactly. I'd already been doing some work in that, but it became much more, oh my gosh, this is it. And when you know that, getting out of bed in the morning is a joy. You have a reason to get out of bed. I've never understood people who don't want to get out of bed, but but this gives you that wonderful incentive that you have a reason to be alive. And what do they say that the two greatest days in your life is the day you were born and the day that you know why? That's Mark Twain. It's just a wonderful thing to know the reason. And then you need to keep checking in with that because life will happen and there'll be those days where you're thinking, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? I'm not very productive. I'm not, some great person doing, amazing things. And I could name people, Tim Tebow and Linda Smith with Shared Hope International. They're doing these amazing things. But guess what? Every bucket has a lot of drops and they all count.
Joe, I can sense a vibrance in your voice that I'm guessing is very different in a positive way than what your early life used to be. Tell our listeners again the name of your book.
The name of my book coming out is going to be Crave a Greater Impact.
and crave a greater impact. I'm believing, Joe, embedded in your book is going to be the impact that part of your life, the negative impact that had occurred, but the greater positive impact that you are having right now. And I want to thank you on behalf of our listeners of living the greater life, the positive side, the smile in your face, the vibrance in your voice speaks the greater life you're living now. Thank you so much, Joe, for everything that you have gone through, but more so the life you're living now and the positive impact and inspiration you are to every one of our listeners and those with whom you come in contact.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and DISC personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.